So today I wanted to make a short video about tags, tags in Path of Exile, because the level of misconception that I see pretty much every single day on the PoE subreddit is massive. I believe something like 95% of the player base. I'm just pulling a number out of my ass, but I think it's pretty good number. 95% of the player base does not understand how tags work or why tags exist at all and what they do. So the main misconception is tags exist so they tell you what support skills you can link to active skills, and this is just 100% untrue. They do not exist for that. They weren't created for that, and furthermore, they don't work like that. So a good example is ball lightning. Ball lightning has an AoE tag. So you must be thinking, well, you must scale with, it must do area damage, you must scale with uh, pretty much every area node. But that's partially false. The reason ball lightning has an AoE tag is because it has an AoE component in which the arcs from the ball have an increased range depending on how much area you give to the skill. Orb of Storms works the same way. But because these skills do not do area damage, they don't actually scale with area damage in any way. And the tags don't reflect this. Like if you look at the gem, it doesn't tell you anywhere. It just says AoE. Obviously, if you look on the wiki, you're gonna find this information, but it's not in game. Another very common example that you see all the time on the subreddit is the burning arrow interaction with duration from its threshold jewel. Target Cat made a, I think, very interesting video showing a not very intuitive interaction. So basically what GGG did is, in order for special abilities that are granted by threshold jewels to certain skills, like for example summon skeletons that transform skeletons into mages, what they did is they modify the main gem with new mechanics, new mechanical interactions. So if you do use the threshold gem, you can support it with specific supports. So for example, for burning arrow is a duration skill. Now it does not have a duration tag, and despite what you will hear in the Target video, it does not gain a tag. First of all, because one, a tag is not required for a skill to have duration scaling, and two, there's no such thing as hidden tag. It doesn't exist. That mechanic doesn't exist in the game. A very good example of this is cast when channeling. So basically, cast when channeling only works with spells. It casts supporter spells at a specific threshold in time. But it works with Detonate Dead, and if you look at Detonate Dead, it doesn't have a spell tag. Now why does it work? Well, for two reasons. Reason number one is tags don't interact that way. So cast when channeling doesn't care about tags. It doesn't care if skill A or skill B they have a spell tag or not. It doesn't care about that. All it cares about is the supported gem a spell? And Detonate Dead, despite what again you're gonna hear very often on the PoE subreddit, is a spell. Now you might ask, well, if it's a spell, why the hell does it not have a spell tag? It is because it does secondary damage, and GGG thought that by giving it the cast tag, it would be more intuitive for players to know that, hey, this doesn't actually do spell damage, but it is still a spell. Despite this, oddly, things like increased critical strike chance for spells do not work because this skill basically has like non-spell crit, like it's very weirdly coded. So there's no such thing as secondary damage crit in this game. You would basically, the only way to affect Detonate Dead crit, the crit of the explosion, is to get like generic crit, something like Assassin gives from power charges, right? But Detonate Dead, at the end of the day, is a spell, and you can test this very easily. If you equip Cruel Spelt, which disables spells, you cannot use this. You can test it very easily by linking it to cast when channeling, or cast when damage taken, or cast on crit, and it will work 100%. Because it does not need the tag. Tag is not for that. So, okay, if we got that out of the way, what the hell are tags for if they're not to tell you what you can support skill with, and they're not there to support mechanics? Why are they for? The reason they exist is classification. What does that mean? For example, you look at the Searing Touch. It says +2 to level of socketed fire gems. Now, how can you know when a skill, a gem, is a fire gem? Is it when it does fire damage? Well, you can make pretty much any gem do fire damage, almost all of them. Is that a fire gem? No. A fire gem is a gem with a fire tag. So this is what tags do. They just classify stuff so you can figure out what is what for this type of items. Or for example, let's say you have an item that says 50% increased damage with movement skills. You gotta figure out which skills are movement, right? You just see, does he have a movement tag or not? To give a further example how tags do absolutely nothing mechanic wise, let's take Freeze Pulse. Let's assume tomorrow GGG gives Freeze Pulse a duration tag. It just gives it a duration tag. It doesn't do anything else but give it a duration tag. What would change? Nothing. The skill would still not interact with increased duration or less duration. It would still not interact with increased skill duration from the tree. Why? Because a tag on its own does nothing. It doesn't add a mechanic to a skill. It doesn't change what you can link to it. It's just a tag. The only thing adding a duration tag to Freezing Pulse would change is if we had, let's say, an item that says +1 to duration gems. In that case, it would work, right? It would actually affect Freezing Pulse. But in any other regard, it does nothing. A tag on its own does absolutely nothing. Now, take the same skill. Let's assume tomorrow GGG adds a duration component to it. Let's assume the distance the Freeze Pulse travels is determined by its duration. And let's assume they do that. They add that functionality without adding a duration tag. Guess what? You would be able to link increased duration or less duration or get duration from the tree, and it would work because they don't care about tags. Those things don't care about tags. So that's pretty much it. It's not a very complicated concept. Tags are for classification, nothing else. The fact that most of the time tags and mechanics are actually the same is because GGG tries to give a skill very similar tags to what the skill actually does, but that's not its purpose. So you should never rely on tags like that. You should never say, oh, this doesn't work with this because it doesn't have that tag. Things don't work like that. They are just for classification, nothing else. So hopefully, less argument, less poor judgment like that, because I read today like, oh, Onslaught from the support gem, it doesn't work with increased duration because it doesn't have a duration tag. No, it doesn't work because it's a buff that's not affected by skill effect duration. It has nothing to do with the duration tag. It could gain a duration tag tomorrow. If they didn't change its functionality, it would still do nothing. So, well, thank you for listening.